So, have any of you made any New Year's resolutions for the year? If so, I would love to hear them. So just shout out a New Year's resolution if you've made one. Anyone? Brian, you have one?
I'm going to lose 10 pounds.
He's going to lose 10 pounds. Don't miss, but you might want to misplace those for good, right? There you go. What else? Any other New Year's resolutions? What? Joy.
Well, it goes against what you just said. Okay, talk less.
Talk less. Talk less. She's going to talk less. What else? Anybody else have one? Come on, someone's got to have one. Read the Bible all the way through. That's great. Anyone else? Anyone? Walt, you have one?
Chiefs go to the Super Bowl, definitely.
Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. That's a resolution you can make. That's a good one. Good, good, good. Well, I actually posted this on Facebook, and a couple of my favorites that I got were more time to refresh, scheduling more one-on-one time with my kids, accept what I have, enjoy it to the fullest, start each and every day with a grateful heart and a joyful prayer. I love that. Well, there's a collective feeling of starting over when we start the new year. And for all the sense of joy and happiness that the Christmas holidays bring, when we start the new year, it gives us a chance to rethink our lives because it's a new day and it's a new year. And I am so excited, actually, for this new year. So let's go ahead and look at Ecclesiastes 3 that says there is a time for everything. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to love and a time to hate. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing could be added to it and nothing taken away from it. I chose this familiar passage for this day. It's actually one of my favorites for funerals because it talks about the cadence of life and all the things that happen throughout life. It implies that we have choices, each of us, every single day. And January 1st is the time to talk about the cadence of life. What's coming up in 2023? What choices will we make? There's a time to love. There's a time for peace. There's a time for everything. And how we spend our lives speaks volumes for what we actually value. At the first service of every single year, John Wesley had his Methodists say the covenant prayer together, just as a reminder that we are no longer ours, but we are God's. A reminder that we should all aspire to something more, something greater. So no matter what your past is, today you can make a change. You can aspire for something more, to something greater, because it is a new year and it is a new day. So as we think back on our resolutions over the years, I think we've all done it. I know I have. I have made the resolutions to either work out regularly, stick to a budget, or eat better. These are all great goals, and they can pay off if we stick to them. But the thing about resolutions is that if we break them, we can feel like we've failed. And it becomes easy just kind of to throw them away or ditch them altogether. So instead of making resolutions and ditching them, I want to suggest to everyone today that there's a better way to enact change. And that's actually to develop some small habits that we can incorporate into our daily lives. So today, I just want to share the 3 things that I am personally going to aspire for the coming year. The first one is, I want to change how I think. I want to open my paradigm. What I'm really wanting to focus on is being able to question myself a little bit, as well as my outlook on life. So instead of just assuming that my way is the only way and the right way, I want to really pick out those preconceived notions and ideas that hold me back from being the kind of person that I totally want to be. Because, sometimes we get stuck in how we see the world, and that's honestly not very helpful. Well, I think we all have our own positions, don't we? And we listen from those positions. There's a story that I love that's from 2 old friends that meet up. And the first friend says to the other one, "Henry, wow, how have you changed? You were so tall and you've grown so thin. You were so tall and you've grown so short. You were so well built and you've grown so thin. You were so fair and you became so dark. What happened to you, Henry?" And Henry says, "I'm not Henry, I'm John." And his friend replies, "Oh, you've changed your name too." As long as we are stuck in our old ways of thinking, then things will never be able to change. We can't change if we don't change the way that we actually see things. And today, at the close of the message, we are going to say the Wesley Covenant Prayer together. And so I thought this would be a good time to tell you a little story about John Wesley and the porter. During John Wesley's student days, so when he was still a student, there was a poor porter who came one night on a cold night and knocked on his door. And he invited him in, and during their conversation, John Wesley observed the man's really thin coat. And he said, "You better get another coat." And the man replied to him at that time, he said, "This is the only coat I have, and I thank God for it." And then Wesley asked the man if he had eaten anything today. And he answered, "I have had nothing today but water, but I thank God for it." Wesley, growing a little bit uneasy in his presence, said that he probably had better leave soon or he would be locked out. "Then what would you thank God for?" he said. He said, "I will thank God for the stones that I get to lay on tonight." Well, Wesley was so moved by the man's sincerity that he said to him, "You thank God when you have nothing to wear, nothing to eat, and no bed to lie on? What else do you thank God for?" And that very simple man replied, he said, "I thank God that he has given me a life, a heart to love, and a desire to serve him." After the man had left with a coat that Wesley had given him, some food for some money, or some money for some food, and some words of appreciation for witness he had made, Wesley wrote down in his journal, and he said, "I shall never forget that porter. He convinced me there is something in religion to which I am a stranger." Wesley knew that he needed to change. And change begins with all of us, but it really change begins with me. So since the first thing that was on my list was to actually look at my life paradigm, I want to make sure that the first thing that my life paradigm is in sync with is love. And I want to challenge myself, and I'm going to try to challenge myself every day to question it so that I don't just keep moving on autopilot, because I want my life to focus on love. I think this is a pretty good example. I had a conversation with a friend not too long ago, and she had a certain way of seeing the world. She was pretty set on her worldview, and she was pretty adamant that her perspective was right. But then again, I think we're all pretty sure that our perspective is right, because if it wasn't, we would probably change it, wouldn't it? So this past summer, when I was she was telling me how her 30-year-old son came to she and her husband and said, "Mom and Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious. I need to tell you something about myself. I've made a pretty big decision about my life." And of course, what he was telling his parents, they weren't ready for, because it didn't fit their worldview. So my friend, she had to stop, and she had to look at her own worldview and ask herself, what do I do when I love somebody so much that I may actually have to change the way I think? Because I'm certainly not throwing my son away. So you see, my friend had run into a situation where the principle of love had actually collided with her own life paradigm. And since we believe in a God of love who identifies by saying, "I am love," God is love, she had to actually change her paradigm to change her worldview. And so this year, what I'm going to try to focus on is that love comes first, and that I would challenge you to do the same thing. Anytime that you see, when you're thinking or talking, that love collides with our life paradigm, it's time to change, because love has got to always come first. We're reminded that in 1 Corinthians 13, that says, the greatest of these is love. So that's the first commitment, that I want to change the way I think and be able to possibly see it from a different paradigm. The second thing I want to do is focus on gratitude. There is a time to be thankful. There's a time to show gratitude every single day. And I know that even though we're just now coming out of the holiday season, I want to think more about gratitude. Because can we ever talk about gratitude enough? I don't think so. Because gratitude is amazing and it's beautiful. And of all the virtues, I think it's the one that's probably needs to be as close to the top as possible. So this year, I really want to focus on what it means to be more grateful. And this is kind of how I've decided I'm going to work on that. And I would suggest that maybe you think of that too. If you don't already have a morning prayer time, I would ask you to commit to waking up every single morning and saying, "Dear God, thank you." Get in the habit of gratitude by practicing it. And if you get up and forget until you get into the shower, say it when you get into the shower. Start your day by showing gratitude. Gratitude to God sets the stage for everything for the rest of the day, because being grateful is a choice. I think sometimes we think of gratitude as being purely a feeling. It's a reaction to something outside of us, but it really is more. 1 Thessalonians 5:16 tells us, "Give thanks in every situation, because this is God's will for you." Giving thanks in every situation, I think sometimes can come across as being a little bit confusing because there are some situations that honestly don't trigger a positive response. Psychologist Robert Emmons said, "It is vital to make a distinction between feeling grateful and being grateful. Being grateful is a choice, a prevailing attitude that endures and is immune to the gains and losses that flow in and out of our lives." Choosing to be a grateful person does not mean that we become totally blind to the things that are sad in our lives or the things that just don't go the way we want them to. It does mean, however, that we choose to not let these bad things bind us from the things for which we're actually grateful. So, how are you at gratitude? How are you at gratitude when things are tough in your life? I would suggest to you today that even in tough times, they can teach us a lot about being grateful. I would say probably my most memorable experience that I was so grateful for, even though life was difficult. It was back in 2002. It was a December, and my husband and I owned a staffing agency at the time. And the economy had taken a turn for the worse, and we had 2 little kids at the time. And honestly, we were struggling financially like we had never been before. Christmas was coming, and it was pretty hard to even make ends meet at the time. And we needed to buy presents for our kiddos. Well, at the time, our daughter Megan was here, enrolled at preschool here at WeCare. And I remember that morning dropping Megan off in her room and then walking down to Miss Peggy's office to write the check for our monthly bill. I got out my checkbook, and I started to write the check. And Peggy said something to me that day that I'll never forget. She said, "Put your checkbook away. You don't owe anything this month. Somebody has paid your bill for you." I just stared at her. I was totally in disbelief, and I started crying. To this day, I am so grateful for that family who helped us. It was one of the hardest times we were going through, and somebody stepped up and helped. And the thing that it did is it truly changed how I looked at the world. Because from that day on, I started looking for opportunities that I could do to help others. Now, maybe you can't write a check for $1,000 to pay someone's preschool bill, but there is something that you can do. Because when our hearts are grateful, it just builds up. Joy and gratitude builds up and it bubbles out. And the nice part is it goes out to other people. And it ends up that our life outlook changes because we can bless others. So the last thing I want to focus on this year is love. And it's not just love, it's showing love to others. When I originally wrote this message, there was a point, the point was just saying love. And then I had a friend point out that, love in general is one thing. But the problem is that when we talk generically about love, it is just more of an idea or a feeling. So I decided I'm going to go a little deeper, and my third focus for this coming year is to show more love to others. I want love to actually be a central part of not just my Christian life, but my experience of everyday living as well. I want to feel like I am living and actually breathing love. And here's how I'm thinking I'm going to do that. First, I'm going to choose to love. Just like being grateful is a choice, choosing to love is also a choice. It's not a feeling. So you may think, well, okay, well, Sherry, then what's the difference between gratitude and love? Well, when I'm grateful, I'm taking it in. It's a sense of appreciation that's coming into me. I see what's good, and it's literally coming in. But when I choose love, that's when I'm giving it away. So gratitude flows in, and love flows out. We're all called into a life of love. It's a choice we make because love is very proactive. And you know, the thing is that we can start with the small things, the ordinary parts of life. We don't have to love by doing the really big things, like dying for Jesus or giving all of our money or God's money away. Small things are big enough for God. It's the small daily activities and things that we can do that make a difference and matter. Because it's in these small habits that shape our character. So I would encourage you and challenge you to be on the lookout for people who you can bless. And when you see a need, it's God giving you that opportunity to show love. And there's 1,000 different opportunities we have each and every day to show love. You could make a dinner for a family in need. You could tell your boss about a good employee. You could take your neighbor's dog for a walk. You could send a care package to a soldier. You could write down your friend's best qualities and send it to them. You could babysit for free. You could buy the person behind you a cup of coffee. You could handwrite a letter to a friend. You could read a book to an elderly person. You could mow your neighbor's lawn. You could help someone put groceries in their car. You could take 15 minutes to really listen to someone. You could let someone cut you in line, or you could do a task for your partner that he or she really, really hates. Or finally, you could just make somebody laugh. There's a picture that they're going to show on screen here that I love. It says, I'm going to focus on being more loving by acting out in small ways, one moment at a time, one person at a time. I love that. So, for this coming year, the 3 things that I want to do is first, change how I think, open my paradigms. 2, to grow in gratitude. And 3, to show others love. Because, you know, if we're not careful, we may just blow through this life being a mother or a father or a spouse or a student or a worker. And then we wake up one day and we're just tired. And then we realize that we may very well be 3/4 away around that track of life, and we may not even really know who we are. So are you spending your life the way you want to be? Will you cross that finish line with regret or with joy? I want to challenge everyone as we start this new year to take some time to think about what is really important to you. I'm calling out love, I'm calling out gratitude, and I'm calling out paying attention so I can prioritize these. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So are you willing, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of Christ, to examine your life and make changes in 2023? There's a time to live and a time to die. There is a time to love. There is a time for everything that you make time for. What will you make time for this coming year? What will you aspire in 2023? In a minute, we are going to close saying the Wesley Covenant prayer together. But first, I just want each of us just to take a little bit of time and think about what you want 2023 to look like for you. And now I would ask that we all stand and say together the Wesley Covenant prayer. I am no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Place me with whom you will. Put me to doing. Put me to suffering. Let me be put to work for you or set aside for you. Praised for you or criticized for you. Let me be full. Let me be empty. Let me have all things. Let me have nothing. I freely and fully surrender all things to your glory and service. And now, O wonderful and holy God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, you are mine and I am yours. So be it. And the covenant which I have made on earth, let it also be made in heaven.